Hey everybody, Andrew from Gameosity here, and today we're going to be returning to the magical kingdom of Valeria as we take a look at an engine-building, tableau-building game set in the same world as Valeria Card Kingdoms. Today, from Daily Magic, it's Villages of Valeria. Once again, the Dukes of Valeria are at it. Having defeated the monsters that were plaguing the kingdom in Valeria Card Kingdoms, they have now been tasked with the role of rebuilding the sort of ravaged countryside of Valeria. And so each of the up to five players, are going to be building a village around their capital city. And the main mechanism that Villages of Valeria uses in its gameplay is action selection. And we've seen this in a couple of other games. Essentially, there are 5 available actions. Here's the action card. I'll explain them in a second. And essentially, every turn, the active player is going to pick which of these 5 actions they want to take, and then every other player is going to have the opportunity to take that action. But when you follow an action, you're either going to do a lesser version of it or a more expensive version of it. Here, I'll give you an example. So it's important to note that every card in Villages of Valeria has a bunch of different symbols and does different things depending on how it's played. And so on this side, you see the cost to build the building. And by build the building, that means add it to your village. Up here is a symbol that is associated with different heroes. Heroes that will join your village depending on which symbols you have and what amount. The symbol up here is the victory points. So this building, once built in the village, is worth 2 victory points. If it has a special power, it'll be listed there. And interestingly, on the bottom here is what they call a development ability. Now let's say my village looked kind of like this. And on my turn, if I'm the active player, I'm going to pick which of these actions I'd like to take. Each of them works a little bit differently. Harvest lets you collect some cards and some resources, but Develop is the one I'd like to talk about right now. If I choose Develop, what I'm saying is I want to take one of the cards in my hand and add it to my village as a resource rather than as a building. So the rule for having led the Develop action means I can discard any card from my hand I want, and then take any card I want that's in my hand and flip it upside down and add it to my keep. And now these resources are available. Not just to me, though. Other players could put coins on there and use those resources for the build action. So let's say it was another turn, or another player chose the build action. And essentially, I forgot, when I developed, I got a coin because I've got a cloister, and that's important. Because now with 3 coins to take the build action, I would pay 1 coin to each of these resources. Your keep is always a wild. And you can use your resources or another player's resources. The coins that you spend on your own resources come back to you. The coins that you spend on other players' resources go to them. The game has a very closed economy, and it's really interesting. And if I had a stone, a wood, and a wild, I could now build this armory in addition to my cloister. It's worth 2 points, and now every time I build in the future, I'll get to draw 1 extra card. So as I mentioned before, 2 of the 5 actions, Harvest and Tax, are about either drawing cards or collecting coins. Develop lets you add the cards upside down to your keep for use as resources and to entice other players to send their coins to you. Build lets you add buildings to your tableau, and the final action is Recruit. As I mentioned before, there are heroes in Villages of Valeria, and they will come and join your village once you have enough buildings of a specific type. Like this monk, for example. You're going to put the monk there, right? Cool. Will only show up if you have 2 holy structures in your building. He's worth 1 victory point all on his own, but he also adds some endgame scoring in the form of extra victory points for every holy structure, and presumably since you've had to have a couple in order to recruit him, you're at least going to have 2. Now, the cool thing about Villages of Valeria is that you really do build an engine over the course of the game. Essentially, most cards that you add to your village, or even some of the adventurers, are going to make it so that certain strategies are kind of emergent. If you build structures that make it beneficial every time you recruit, then you're going to do that a lot. Whereas if you get some things early on that lets you draw a lot of cards every time you build, then that's going to kind of inform your strategy. Each of these 5 actions is useful, and some of them are kind of no-brainers to follow, because, well, if I follow a tax action, I only get to collect 1 coin. That's okay. But there are a couple that almost feel like penalties. Like, if you choose to lead with a build action, it's more difficult for me to build a structure, and maybe I'm going to wait for my turn. That comes out the most, we found, in a 2-player game, because then there's almost no reason not to wait for your turn to do the action that you want, and so it kind of goes back and forth rather than around the table. On the other hand, it's a race, because once a certain number of cards are added to the village, that's the end of the game, and it can come very fast. And that's actually one of our criticisms of the game. Despite how much we like it, it is possible for a player to, really charge the ending when they find that they're way out ahead. Of course, the trick is to not let somebody get out ahead. My only other criticism of it is the fact that there's really no benefit to not following an action. There are a few other games that have this action selection thing where you pick what you want to do, and then everybody has an opportunity to either join you or not join you. And there are a few examples of that, sort of like Tiny Epic Galaxies or Eminent Domain, where if you choose not to follow, you still get something for that. And in Villages of Valeria, if you choose not to follow, you just don't take the action. It's okay, just kind of feels like you're missing out every time it happens. Those little minor dings aside, Villages of Valeria is a fantastic little game. It is gorgeous, first of all. It's got the same illustration style as Valeria Card Kingdoms. It's just stunning to look at on the table, and every single character and every single building card just looks fantastic. I love the whole engine building aspect of it, where every card that you add to your tableau is probably going to make you a little bit better at one of those 5 actions, and so you'll have your strategy shaped and emerge as you go through. And even though I kind of said that there was a little bit of a weirdness with the 2-player mode, in the sense that it was easy to go back and forth rather than follow actions, the truth is, it's a great 2-player game. Jess and I really enjoy it. It's solid, it's light, and I have to say, I'm just really pleased by it. Every little addition to the Valeria line adds a little something, and this is no different. We strongly recommend you check out Villages of Valeria if you're in the market for this kind of game, and if you haven't checked out Valeria Card Kingdoms, it's a solid lead-in to kind of replaced Machikoro for me, but that's another review. Anyway, I'm Andrew, this is Gameosity. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next game.
Enjoy that review? Then please like, comment, favorite, subscribe, and check out our full reviews on Gameosity.com.